You look like the kind of guy that read Jordan Peterson and it really helped.
Yeah, it did. Wow.
I've met a few different like brands of Jordan Peterson, like people that have like gotten a lot out of Jordan Peterson, and there is a kind of guy. There's one kind of guy that you are quite like, and it's like a really good version, like the really good Jordan Peterson fan, which is a dude that like read Jordan Peterson and was like, oh, I repaired my relationship with my family, and like I care a lot about like like protecting women and having like a good job.
And went to therapy and understood that feelings are an actual thing.
Yeah, and I care about like morality and like I care about like doing things in my own life that make me feel like proud of myself and not like just jacking off and playing video games or whatever. It's
did I tell you when I went to therapy, I learned interesting a thought and a feeling. Did we talk about that yesterday?
No, what was that?
The biggest thing, I went to therapy during COVID, like I think around October 2020 or something like that, kind of like at the height of Black Lives Matter. And the biggest thing from therapy was learning that there is a difference between a thought and a feeling. So like if someone asks you, like I would get in a fight with my friend, and then I go to therapy and I'd be like, well, what do you think of that? Mm-hmm. I'd answer that the exact same way as, how do you feel about that? So my therapist would be like, how do you feel about that? Well, I think, he's had some trouble recently, so he's taking it out on me, and he's like, I didn't ask you what you think. So he had to demonstrate it. He's like, Paul, a thought is what you just did, blah, 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 all this stuff.
Yeah, right,
feeling is like, fucking sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, that hurt. I was embarrassed. I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, it sucked. And I started laughing like pretty hard, and then it's like a 15-minute walk home, and I was laughing almost the whole way home. I was like, it's so obvious.
Yeah. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, and the language of I feel, like being able to say that is so much more powerful, because it's not like because if it's I think, because I identify as a thinker, I have to say something that is logical or whatnot. Like I have to say something that would convince you or is in the right words. Yeah. But if I just say, I do not feel good about this, or this makes me feel uncomfortable or whatever, it's like I don't have to justify that logically or whatever.
It's also like and
Peterson set that first ground of like integrate your thoughts and feelings. It was like, oh, maybe I should check out therapy and all that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. I also to speak in like kind of the almost like religious language again, like we're probably gonna use a lot of Peterson.
I would imagine.
Because we do. Yeah. Because I researched all that shit. And
with the signed Peterson poster over there. Yeah. That's weird.
It's for a video.
That's weird. That's incel shit.
It's for a video. Yeah. I went and saw him live for video, and I figured I should probably get a prop, and I thought I should probably get the signed one, pay like more. It's a business expense. It's for the video. Like, what am I gonna go to the Jordan Peterson show and leave without a signed poster? Like, this is the only time I'm doing this, I think.
You financially backed a weepy-eyed fascist. I want you to know that.
Actually, I got gifted the ticket by a friend of mine in New York.
All right, that's cool.
So I didn't even pay for it.
That's cool.
Because I was on the fence of whether or not I'm gonna, and I haven't paid for Peterson Academy yet. I did pay for the self-authoring suite.
Yeah, I did. So I've done that. I've given that gift a lot.
I have to make those calls. Anyway, whatever. But the thinking feeling thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing about the thinking thing is like rationalism, like the trying to be objective, basically. Is like on one hand it's like the self-transcendence where it's like, okay, if you like you can go beyond just what you feel about a situation. So if someone hurts you and you're like, they're an asshole, and then you go deeper, like rational and like transcend yourself a bit and go like, well, they react because of this and I'm reacting because of this, and it's like, so that's good. Yeah. But also there's something encoded into that thinking thing where you're trying to be God. Like you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, because if you're thinking, you're like, well, I can explain everything. It's like, yeah, but what's much more vulnerable is I feel like really afraid right now.
Now, and it's interesting because I used to, and I remember seeing a tweet that literally said this verbatim, was like, I used to believe that, or I used to remember feeling like if someone just immediately or very quickly was able to break down the barriers and start saying like, I feel depressed or something like that, or this makes me feel really bad. People who are very vulnerable with the emotions, like that's a superpower. Like, oh man, like how, like that's so much courage and all that. Yeah. And I remember that is what I thought initially. But then I saw how it can be used as like I feel this way, and therefore I said I feel this way, and now it's on you to like adapt to that, because this is my truth. I feel this way. I don't know if did you ever see Max Carson, Mr. Girl, that whole arc with Destiny? Mm-hmm. He was a guy who went on Destiny's channel, and he very much was the say what I feel type thing, and it was very interesting for me, because I was like, I've never seen this before. He's just saying what he feels and not justifying it logically, but that's powerful.
Someone that I think Destiny has spoken to, Ayla, that I think I'm charmed by seeing her in conversation sometimes, because she...
Yeah, Ayla and Mr. Girl had a conversation that was very strange. But that Max Carson, that guy, I remember being like, impressed by that and admired that, the ability to just say, you know, what feelings are like in the moment.
Yeah.
But then I could see how it was kind of like, from my perception, he seemed to like, I feel like you're, he'll say something like, I feel like you're manipulating me right now. I'm just going to leave it out there. It's like...
Yeah, and that's different. And so it's kind of akin to when people go like, I feel like, and then you're just saying like the preamble to a think. So you'd be like, I feel like you don't care about me at all, and you've never cared about me, and you don't care about this conversation.
My therapist called me that specifically one time. I'm like, he's like, no, just because you found out that you start with I feel doesn't mean you...
You can't just say I feel and then slot in all the same shit. It's like, there's actually a conceptual difference, or like a practical experiential difference, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Oh my god. So Destiny with Bridges, I was invited to go on it.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was gonna do it. I was gonna do it to promote my live shows.
This is all the stuff that we can cut out if we want. By the way,
I'm putting it in.
All right, that's fair.
I was gonna go on it. Because I was gonna go on it and doom scroll like Cinderella's thing.
Yeah. Because Joshua went on. Yeah.
Yeah, and a few things because I wanted to promote like my show. I've never done this before. Like I have a tour coming up, and I was gonna do a podcast circuit to promote it. Because now it's like I'm incorporated. I have corporate finance. I'm taking on like financial risk through my business, and now I have a board of like people that I trust, and I'm like, I need to do this.
You're
like
capitalist neoliberal shill now.
I think there's a big difference between running like a successful organization and, you know, being like a capitalist.
Okay, Hassan Piker, whip out the Rolex now.
I think it's true. I actually had a conversation with someone literally just like today about this. So I had a conversation with a family member who runs a charity, a very large charity in Canada, and it's like a food bank. It's like a drop-in center. It's like one of these things, right? For like a whole like county. And so here's one thing, right? So they're giving food to people for free, right? They have it donated, and they use their finances where they're feeding their community for people that can't eat, right? And which is a surprising amount of people. But a lot of people can't eat. They can't afford to eat, but they won't go to a food bank because what you're going to do, you're going to stand out in your small town in line outside. Like, you know what I mean? Like everyone's going to see you. There's this intense thing.
Yeah.
So they had this idea where you come in, they built a cafe, you come in, you have a coffee, we just like chat, hang out with you, and you get this form, you can fill it, here's what I need, and they give it to you, you walk out with a bag, right? And that's it, right? So it has this thing of like, so anyway, so this is innovation, right? So in terms of like, even this is kind of like, you could recharacterize this as seeing like a gap in the market or like a need and being innovative and doing a thing where you kind of outcompete other things that are, there's a way you could frame it like that. But also, there's a really thin line between like innovation and disrupting a market so that you can further your financial interest and just solving a problem. And they're not the exact same thing, but there's a lot of crossover. And so I think a lot of like the lefty people that they're not concerned with economics at all. And so I have a video about this actually doing later this year. And I actually talked to Lindsay Ellis about this when I first met her too. It's something that I care about is like, y'all, like you don't disparage like organizational successes. Like you need to know how finances work. And that's what I want to do. Like one of the things I want to do is try to empower people to get more control over their personal finance and understand a little more about this stuff. Because like, you need to, even if you seized all the means and you're redistributing it all, it still needs to work. It has to function. Like as soon as you're going to direct all the funds in a very socialist way, you still need to make the thing work. Like someone needs to know how to use money. You can't be like money, like itself, like any form of organizing money smartly or in a way that like, you know, keeps you above.
The dynamics of resource allocation are...
It's important. That's as important to leftists as anybody else.
That's not capitalism itself. It's part of the dynamics of human organization or whatnot. This is very radical centrist of you. It's one of the reasons I very much appreciate you.
I appreciate, your appreciation of me.
Back to Bridges, though. You were going to do Bridges, and then what happened?
Well, this is what's exciting about taking on the risk too, right? Like of the financial risk. It's a beautiful thing about like trying to run a business of something you're proud of and getting things done that you want to get done that you think are good, and you're pricing it fairly and people like it. And it's working and it's growing. It's a good thing. Is that like it's a maturity thing? As I was like. Now, like, I realize it's just on paper. It's so much more, instead of like YouTube, Patreon, I just do stuff, fuck you, and then give me money, and then I don't really care if I don't have it because I didn't have it when I started this, and just be really, now it's like, this costs something, and it's going to net me something if I do things right, and I need it to do that, or else I'm in trouble. And I'm getting older, and I'm looking at like building roots, like in some relationships and with family things, where I'm like, I need this to work out for not just me. Like this is,
Yeah.
and that's a really exciting thing where it's like, it's de-psychologizing. It's a beautiful experience. Anyway, so part of that is I'm going to do a podcast circuit to promote the show. I've never done that before. Go on the podcast because it's part of my marketing strategy, which is like, you know, for example, if someone invests in like, you know, like what am I saying? I can just say my mom's on my board of directors because, like, you know, we talk about this stuff all the time, and she's run her own business before. And so there was one thing where I could take out credit to book, like, with my business, to book like the deposits for the venues, and then when I play the show, like, of course it's paid off. So it's be accruing interest. And I was like, man, if I just ask like my mother for like a low interest loan to pay these things, then I don't pay the credit stuff.
Yep.
Right? So it's just this simple fucking, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Anyways,
it's institution building. In a sense,
security building, like it's relationship building too. It's like, and yeah, it is institution building because I want to build an institution that I believe in, and I want to be able to do all the things that I want to. I have big goals. So, anyways, okay, sorry, I'm so distracted. So part of the like, I'm trying to justify a loan that I might ask for by my mother, to whom I'm now accountable. Is I'm like, here's my marketing strategy. It's very specific. I have a mailing list, I have YouTube videos, and I have like on a schedule, and I have podcast appearances, and actually it makes sense. It's exciting. Sorry, I'm yapping so much. I was trying to say the desk thing is so simple.
Listen.
It's just that I tentatively was like, this new podcast looks good. I like Kyla. I met Kyla, like the other co-host of Bridges.
Oh, nice.
I met her, and I really like her. And
you mean Ghislaine or Ghislaine?
Don't stop this.
I shouldn't joke about that.
It's not her fucking fault, man.
I shouldn't joke about it.
But even to her, I expressed, I was like, I'm interested in potentially like Destiny's better nature, or his ability to build like an institution, right?
Yeah.
To build, like,
Same.
to use the Wild West of the internet to build new institutions, given this populist uprising against the existing ones. We need this, right? So I don't care. I mean, I'm repulsed by Destiny's personal drama and edginess or whatever, but it's like, if this is institution building, I might be a fan of that. I'm not for like just not only associating with people who are squeaky clean or whatever. Like, I don't want people to expect that. I want to do more than that, you know? Anyways, but then his Kyla was empathetic back. He was like, it makes sense. And there's a lot of that where it's like, he has some of these almost institution building, almost breaking into mainstream, doing impressive stuff. And, but then also his personal drama keeps catching up. And then what happened was his personal drama caught up.
Yeah.
It won.
Yeah.
It won. Messy motherfucker.
Well, that's one of my principal interests in Destiny is precisely that. He's like one of the leading figures on institutionalizing, I'm using broadly, of institutionalizing online politics or that online discourse sphere.
Harnessing
into practical action.
Yeah, actually, he did the canvassing thing.
Yeah,
right?
and I asked him this about because he canvassed in Georgia in a very close Senate race. Because you've gone on
Destiny's stream 3 times?
3 times now, yes, and it's only gotten worse each time. But I'm on my, because the last time I was on it, I said maybe Israel did 9/11, which, to be clear, maybe they did. And so now I'm on my apology tour, so that's why I'm hanging out with, ultra progressives like you, and I'm queer baiting my audience now.
I'm cleaning your image.
Yeah, I'm drinking out of a pink coffee cup, and it's just, I apologize. Sorry, everyone, this is a mistake. I should never have said that, he's translating sort of amorphous political discourse and exchange of ideas into actionable, like, canvassing, which in that Senate race, like, literally tipped the balance of power in the whole United States. Like, it was the Democrats won the House, and it was a razor-thin election. And arguably, if he wasn't there, they might not have won.
It made a practical difference, and this is why, like, I took an interest. It's because it's not because for
better or worse, he's on that forefront.
I don't know if I even should say this was funny. I was on a call with FD, and I remember I was talking about how I might go on Bridges, and how I was like, I met Kyla, and I like Kyla, and he was like, yeah, and he was like, yeah, I like Kyla. She seems nice. I'm like, yeah, she is. I like her a lot. But I was like, and she really believes, like, in Steven, and he was like, why? It's so fucking funny. I was like, yeah, fair enough. But that is the why, though, is because I don't know that much about Destiny. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I just care, actually, just culturally now, about if we're just at the behest of this widespread conspiratorial populism, losing all faith in rituals and democracy and all that, then what I'm now interested in, like, I kind of, for a second, I started tilting kind of like, taking JJ's track, where I was like, maybe we need to restore our faith in, like, the mainstream media and maybe like the liberal institution, like maybe, you know? But seeing as the world kind of democratically is like, nah, then I'm back to where I kind of started, and which is that like, then we need to go to this wild west of the new thing, the attention economy, and build new institutions. And that's now, so that's actually the concern of a lot of my research, between rituals and like the religion and the democracy and the relationship and the like wearing multiple agencies and, you know what I mean, playing with identity.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday, and I want to talk about it at some point. But specifically, like...
So the point is, Destiny was one of those people. Like, you look at some of these other guys, like, no offense, but some of the biggest, like, leftist content creators, the best thing they can pull off is just donations to charity. They can't build shit for some reason. What? Yeah. How? With this millions that you make every year, and with this incredible reach that you have, you can't build anything?
Imagine if Hassan was competent and, like, as an organization builder. Like, like...
No, and that's what actually melts my brain. So what about all these leftist video essayists, and then Hassan, and then how about Destiny? What if all those people could speak to each other conditionally, not like we're all best fucking friends, but we're voting the same because we don't want Donald Trump to be president, right? Yeah. Shouldn't that not be obviously there? And clearly we lack the like culture and philosophy and means to do this. And so that's why I like Destiny looked like he's actually doing something. I don't give a fuck about the like, yeah, but we should cancel him and he sucks. I'm like what about doing anything? Anyone doing anything?
Well, this is interesting because it's like, because by all on paper, you and I should not be in
cahoots.
Yeah, in dialogue. Yeah. Well, I mean, not in dialogue, but yeah. But and it's like, because like for example, I'm happier that Trump won than Kamala.
Right.
Am I happy that Trump won? No, I didn't vote for Trump either. I drove 10 minutes, paid $10 to park to cast my vote for Jill Stein in Texas, and I was like, she might win, maybe. No.
I'd say, hey, also someone like a really close friend of mine too, that is an American citizen, also voted like Jill Stein in a way that, and I felt like really strongly that I was like, no, it's gotta be an anti-Trump. What are you doing? Like this isn't, you know. Yeah. But it was concern for Palestine. It's very passionate about it. So like, it's funny again. Like I don't know. Like sometimes Dreg is a little more right than JJ. Every once in a while.
A little more correct, right? Or
a little
right
more
wing?
correct. A little more correct.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the horseshoe theory.
McCullough? JJ texted me after I posted our podcast, me and Greg's, and he gave me some choice feedback, and I was like, is it just because we roasted you constantly in it? So, and this is now modus operandum for any of my conversations with Torontoans or Torontonites or whatever you guys
are. To roast JJ?
We have to roast JJ at some point, but that's fine. But my point is like, okay, like, yeah, on paper, you and I are opposites and should not be in coalition, so to speak, whatever that means. But it's like, and this goes to like the principle of democracy and like understanding there are things that you do that I disagree with and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But then like, what is the thing that allows us to dialogue in this way that like the people like Destiny and them can't even form a coalition with people who are on their side like entirely, right? Yeah. Part of it is just like, I mean, I think not being a bad person is, you know, and like
there's a bit of like
not being psychologically unaware of your own flaws, you know. It's like
there's a few moral things, like some of them are moral and religious, and I think that's one of the things that you and I have some things in common. I think I'm saying this not on a deep level because we're best fucking friends or anything, but I think we have some like common moral and religious like convictions that kind of guide us through conversation and stuff, that like we find great common ground in. The same, like, you know, I've always said, like, when I was working in a church as a worship leader and also just like volunteering there, I was a janitor too. Like, I was, you know, feeding the homeless side by side by like a 6-year-old lady that thought the transgenders were coming to kill like Canada through Justin Trudeau's like, I don't know, conspiratorial, malevolent actions, right? And like, there's our common ground. It's right now it's feeding the poor, right?
Yes.
And that's what I mean about like democracy and wearing multiple agencies. It's like, so you and I, in terms of voting, you know, I don't vote in the U.S., so also that there's a difference there, right? Yeah. You know, but like you and I, in terms of voting, might not be on the same side, and so in that world, it's like we're not really in community, and we're kind of working against each other to some degree, right? But in other ways, I think I admire like the best compliment I can give you is that, you know, what the problem people have with centrists is that they are saying that, but they're all right wing. That's pretty much the biggest thing, right?
If you're left wing, that's what you think. The right wingers say it just as much, but the left wingers don't hear what the right wingers say. But yes, that is
what the right wingers say. That
the right wingers say centrism is just progressivism with a speed limit. Like, you'll just be progressive in 5 years or whatever.
That's charming.
Which is partly why I'm like, Okay, first off, no matter what you identify with, you're going to get flack. Like, you're not really a leftist, you're not really conservative.
Okay, cool, yeah.
And even the centrist thing,
And you pull this on people all the time, and I respect it, right? Is you're like, I have actual conservative friends. Do you guys do you talk to conservatives?
Yeah.
Do you actually talk to any fucking conservatives?
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, I don't have as much access, but I think I already have more access than, like, a lot of my very lefty friends. And I value that. I even see it in my audience a little bit, too. And I've watched it slowly, quietly, politically diversify.
Right.
Mostly it's like center left and some center right, and then a lot of left, which is great. I think that's fine. But I care about actual diversity. But again, principles of democracy. I don't think that every audience has to be politically diverse. I don't think it's an inherently necessary all things. Like, no, of course we have to have leftist spaces, right? Like, of course.
Yeah. Or Christian spaces, or like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just for what I'm interested in. I'm happy that it's a bit diverse and tolerant for me is like an absolute necessity, right? Diverse and whatever.
Yeah, and like I mean I view it like this. Goes back to the mimetic feudalism idea that I will expand upon in a future video. But it's like there are these different like.
Wait, I didn't get to the compliment.
Oh, hit me. Okay, yeah.
The compliment was you're like actually centrist.
That's what
you really work at it.
I know, that's so funny. FD said the same thing one time. He's like. He's like, P.F. Jung might actually be a true centrist. Destiny said the same thing, too.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's actually a beautiful thing. It's a high compliment,
I do appreciate
right?
that, yeah.
So, and that's true. And so I respect that. I respect that you actually, like, that's you telling me, some of your personal story, too. It's just an actual conviction of yours. It's a priority.
Well, and that goes back to, like, even the therapy thing about thoughts and feelings. It's like, I know that, there is no such thing as stating a set of principles like out, in a disembodied intellect way that we can just logically identify. All reasoning is motivated reasoning. Mm-hmm. Like everything you say is motivated by, unconsciously or otherwise, like even the reason we're doing this podcast, or even the reason I decided to put videos on YouTube or whatever. It's like you're a person first with psychological, unconscious, irrational motivations.
Yeah.
And then you use rationality to, build upon that or something like that. But that relates somehow because it's like, it's not like centrism just because it's just some Hegelian thing. It's like, no, and it goes back to like childhood where really kind of in the archetypal sense, it's like, my parents fought a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I love my mom. I love my dad. I recognize that they're both correct on certain things. Mm-hmm. I would never pick one or the other.
Yeah.
They have problems with each other. I see what their problems are with each other. I hear both of their sides of the story, and yet I see what the argument really is.
Yeah.
And that is essentially how I view a lot of the political dispute. Now, there's a danger in that because it's like...
It's so funny. I mean, you're almost like you're just pathologically... like.
Yeah, I know. It's both correct.
It's funny. You're almost pathologically centrist. You're like, I see the both things and I need to reconcile them. I need to explain them to each other. Yes,
and this is what the people who call me a neo-Nazi sympathizer or some shit, or sorry, a useful idiot. Most people people who are critical of me do not honestly doubt my intentions, I don't think. Some of them do.
Yeah.
Good for them. But the ones that I'm like, I understand that criticism are, you're a useful tool for X or X talking points or whatever.
Because you're trying to empathize with like something that basically shouldn't be.
And I recognize that is a real danger. I also do believe I account for it to a good degree because I constantly employ the language of freak left and freak right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not interested in talking to these type of people. I'm not interested in talking to these type of people. There's certain things that are not worth engaging
it's funny
with.
Do you actually do it? Like, again, when you look at like Jordan Peterson, is that he likes to say, "Oh, I'm against the extremities of the right and the left," but he has this clear tilt about the left particularly bothers him, and he is kind of okay with the right.
Yeah, yes, in specific, like we don't have to go down the Daily Wire hole, and like there's extreme right wing stuff going on at the Daily Wire, Netanyahu and all that. He doesn't say anything about.
Yeah,
and
he doesn't raise his voice on. He holds his tongue on the excesses of the right.
Exactly. So now
in America now.
Yeah, and so I'm very comfortable. I used to be like, oh, well, of course, Jordan Peterson. My whole maps of meaning is inherently centrist, yin and yang, order and chaos, find the balance.
Yeah.
In practice, Peterson is absolutely right wing now, and it's like so. It's rescuing the father from the belly of the whale. What do we say in the car?
You were just saying that I was
yassifying the father of the belly. That's what you're doing.
You're saying I was yassifying.
You're yassifying Jordan Peterson because you're taking all of the good shit from Jordan Peterson, the true stuff, and just feeding it to your left wing audience that loves the yassification. I'm taking the good stuff from Jordan Peterson and feeding it to the chuds or whatever my perceived audience is, which is interesting because I also don't really have a good conception of what you're talking about, like a diverse audience.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's a lot of like Destiny fans solely because
you went on Destiny's thing.
Yeah,
so that happens.
But like, it is also a lot of like OG Jordan Peterson fans. I do think I have somewhat of a niche of like people who really liked old school Jordan Peterson and are upset with new Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
But not in like I don't, there's like a I don't know, kind of morally pretentious way, like, I don't like Jordan Peterson now. It's like, no, Maps Meeting was fucking gold. Like, and I love going against the cringe atheists, the heart, I call them cringe atheists, which I somewhat reject, because I know a lot of the atheist critique of Jordan Peterson comes from a place of, these are people who had genuine religious trauma.
Yeah.
And so...
It's a lot of the critique of religion broadly, right?
And so I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't call them cringe atheists. It's just a funny thing. I can't please everyone. But...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But, back to like the mimetic feudalism idea of like, there's different, like you and I have different audiences, and I'm sure our audiences would disagree, or some proportion of our audience would not 100%. Would not get
it's
along
all kind
well.
of at different like degrees of tendencies, right? And so like a chunk of a tendency of your audience would really hate a tendency of my audience, right? Like that's a big chunk of both.
Right, but like in some sense, if we're both, for example, conveying the value of pragmatism, right, as a philosophy, it's like, well, my audience, the ones that like me or the ones that trust me, will be more receptive to that. Your audience, the ossified ones who love the ossification of pragmatism, will appreciate that. And like we're both serving the same positive end, even if maybe even some of the aesthetics, some of it just boils down to aesthetics and difference or something like that,
Yeah. And that's really important, the aesthetics, because that's a big chunk of communication. You were saying, we were talking about our differences in our demographics when you look at our analytics on YouTube, which is one of the few things I do look at, just like the ages and locations of people that are watching my things, especially when deciding where to go on tour. But yeah, mine's like basically total half and half male female with a little more female. And then also a good chunk of other. Yep. And then you're talking about
mine is too. Mine's 50-50 male female. No, it's like, I think it's 98% boys.
and feeling like, and so this is the thing about aesthetics, right? Is like actually you can, depending on how you change what you're doing, you can change that. And this is pragmatism, right? And this is one of the things about like Jordan Peterson, right? Is sometimes he does fetishize the concept of authenticity, like just discharge, emotional discharge, like saying the thing I think, even and especially if they tell me not to, instead of like, no, the truth of what you say is buried inside of what it accomplishes.
Right. What are you trying to achieve?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you are trying to achieve, for example, as Peterson once said, like quelling the extremities of both sides and unifying society, and that's not what's happening.
Correct.
So he's just a failure.
Right. Well, and that goes into I want to ask your opinion on Zog, but that goes into. I
don't think about that stuff.
I know, but that because of my personal experiences, I have a lot of. What would you say? Empathy for the kind of people who fall down those rabbit holes. And so it's like, well, pragmatically, what are you achieving with language that can be perceived or, is in whatever sense, used by bad people? It's like, well, this is how, aesthetically, this is how I open the line of communication to be able to then lean in and say, hey, if you say this, I'm not going to judge you for it. In fact, I'm going to have a dialogue with you. And then we can figure out like, wait, of course Zog. Yeah, all my dogs hate Zog. Oh, but hold on. What are you talking about? Fucking all Jews? Like, are you nuts? What about this? It's right. And that's important. And that is a big part of what goes into like memes being more important than logic. Which I think we can. We talked about like culture crafting, right? Yes. Is a cool kind of concept, because a big thing that people don't understand necessarily, or I do a bad job communicating, is I also lean into the vibe, it's all about vibes over logic, which is like, no, it's intuition is as important epistemologically as rationality. That's what I really believe. Right. Because we elevate rationality so much, I'm happy to lean into the vibes, like anti-intellectualism is based.
Exactly.
It's like,
obviously, it's always if you see a scale tipped really hard, I just tip it the other way. And that's why I also always talk about like art is objective, right? Because if we lived in a time where we suffered like rampant like kind of elitism, where like there's a bunch of like marginalized groups where their aesthetic sensibilities were never even like considered, and it's like a monoculture that's suffocating us all, and everyone always has to dress the same way as everybody else, and like then that I would be like, no, fuck you, like art is subjective. We can like with the miracle of our intuition and individuality be original and fuck buck all the norms,
yeah.
but that's not the world I grew up in. I grew up in one where people don't have any shared like artistic language, or people are actively hostile to even discussion of shared artistic language, which again I think is like symptomatic of like a broader degradation of the soul of democracy.
Well,
like
and you talk about in that objectivity in art video, or maybe it was subjectivity in art, one of the two. You talk about like where subjectivity is our emergency escape button.
Yeah, that's the
that we
first
can
one,
use pragmatically to be like, okay, let's try and establish.
I didn't have the word pragmatic back then.
Yeah. It's like let's establish, and you put it really well. It's like consensus breeds convention, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Something like consensus, convention, and then language, something like that. And like, and then even if like you betray the convention, you're still saying something. And so
and we can use subjectivity to escape.
See, I was so much better when I didn't read books. Just said stuff.
I never read books. That's why I'm as great as I am.
I'm trying to get back to that.
Depending on whether people agree with that.
More videos are necessary.
But like, what I want to talk about is, because like when I say vibes are more important than intuition, or vibes are more important than logic, like on the face of it, that sounds stupid. But really, what I'm getting at is, what convinces people more, logic or art? And in my opinion, it's so obviously art, right?
And that's a big part of what Jordan Peterson often is saying when he's critiquing like rationality, when especially in the older before times Jordan Peterson, is he's always critiquing rationality because it's like that's not how people make decisions. That's rationality is not necessarily always as relevant to the world of action as he would say. And so if we're concerned about like, I mean, again, like take like what Destiny's super like liberal, like even just the aesthetics of it, right? Which is like, this is objectively true. I can't believe people are doing this while the objective truth is against you. Well, people are crazy. They don't even care about objective truth. And it's like, you can just scream that for the rest of your life. But right now, Donald Trump is elected. Yeah. So
that's and this is my dad is very this-minded attitude where it's like, well, this is just the truth. This is just the facts. And if people don't accept it, they're stupid. It's like, okay, hold on. If you're really concerned with the facts and you want to frame it in terms of facts, the deeper fact is people don't put, or people's minds are not changed
by facts.
Yeah. And that in and of itself is a fact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're still operating within a rational sort of objectivist framework or whatnot.
And so these are both kind of the same thing, right? So this is something I've also like gone back and forth with. Is there's basically two ways I think to, like in this is in the biggest like philosophical sense. There's like two ways that you can try to like, how do I say, unify the world, do anti-dualism or something like that. Sure. And one is like, so dualities tend to place one side of the duality as the kind of inferior role. Yeah. So like if you look at Jordan Peterson's work,
sacred and profane
broadly, he's it's true. Well, that's a very clear like distinct example because sacred's so clearly superior. But in like Jordan Peterson, there's a kind of quiet, no matter what, like as always, is implicit. Chaos is kind of the worst one. You know what I mean?
You think that? No, I do not get that
from him.
I think I genuinely believe. Because he talks about the totality of order as like Nazism
in his philosophy, he's accounted really well for duality. Like actually, technically. But if you look at the way that he moves through the world, he's clearly more concerned about like the chaotic leftist feminine hysteria. And he's clearly has a preference and an attraction to the big, strong, you know what I mean? Even down to the point of like, you know, like, this is a point from, you know, that one professor that wrote the essay thinking he's dangerous as he was on his rise. He makes this point, and I also feel really like I feel like this too. I mean, the fact that he collected all that Soviet art, like that totalitarian state propaganda, and he covered his entire family home with it so that he never forgets. It's like he does have an attraction to the totalitarian personality. Mm-hmm. And I think that in terms of whether he's like kind of obsessed with apocalyptic stakes and is somewhat attracted to high stakes war, I think he is. I think he finds it exciting.
Well, he cites that at the beginning of his, I think, Maps of Meaning lecture. He starts out and he talks about this in Maps of Meaning. He was obsessed every day with the threat of nuclear war.
I know, but from the age of like, and then he got into politics at 14.
Yeah, right.
He started in the NDP.
Which is funny.
What
a fucking nerd.
I had a line in the video. I don't know if it's still in the Jordan Peterson video in Act 3 at this point, but if it's like this guy cares so much about the fate of the world, like it's terrible for him. Like it's like he's giving him brain damage. Like he's not well. It's an unhealthy amount of care about whether the world lives or dies.
That in particular is something I remember because I'm the same way. So I like, you know, external conflict. It's like my parents are fighting from childhood. So I view external conflict as this is my conflict to solve. I've internalized outer conflict as mine.
And for him, it's like he's taken the whole Holocaust, like the whole 1900s
Yep.
of all war and death camps and everything, and he's like, that's the stakes of my life,
Right?
And that's also exciting too, because if you get into his philosophy, and you're like, holy shit, the stakes of me like cleaning my room is
the
like,
fate of the world depends on it.
Is the fate of the world and of the hell and heaven and the Holocaust and shit. It's exciting,
exactly.
but I think he's quite addicted to the taste of blood. Okay, so there's something I want to say about that.
Go ahead.
Which is just that with him, though, I think that actually... Okay, so that's its own problem. What I was trying to say is when you create a duality, there's kind of like one side is superior and one side's inferior. Sure. Generally, this is what happens, right? So with the ancient Greeks, they're like, there's the world of forms, the spirit world, and then there's lowly material manifestations. So that means that the kind of like material world is less than the holy world, right? Like this is just that, and that's eternal. Mm-hmm. Even just the word eternal versus immanent. It's like eternal is like the more powerful. It's like, oh, it stays, you know? And so one of the ways, or in modern society, a lot of time it's like objective versus subjective is the common. So the objective is the more real. You should be objective about this. The subjective is fleeting, you know, less real. And so there's different ways to like try to work this out. And one of them is pure anti-dualism, which is it is impossible to separate these things. They interpenetrate, right? Obviously, what did you say before? There is like there's no like detached. What is Vladimir Solovyov? He's like the purely objective thing is a thought without a thinker and without anything to think of.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. Disembodied intellect.
So they're always attached. That's one thing, and then the other thing is to be like, wait, the subjectivity is important. You know what I mean? And so you can either broaden so you can kind of argue for the duality being like, wait, actually. The subjectivity is absolutely essential. Wait, sorry. I kind of... This actually is complicated for me. I've been trying to figure out how to say this in a way that's really clean, so I'm just going to do my best here. Yeah. It's either broadening the definition of objectivity or problematizing objectivity. Do you know what I mean? It's either being like, these two things aren't really real, or it's being like, that real thing has a lot of weaknesses that this real thing doesn't, you know?
Yes.
So it's either like we're propping up the inferior side, or we're collapsing the meaning of the sides, right? So anyways, I don't know how.
Well, like Vervaeke talks about transjectivity. It's like objectivity and subjectivity, and then transjectivity is like objective statements about intersubjective phenomena or something like that. It's like that's the reconciliation. Objective and subjective are terrible terms, in my opinion. Like in terms of getting to the bottom of things. Like even just color. Is it objectively true that I'm wearing a blue? You know, whatever. Well,
what color is
you can't be white.
It's kind of
you can't be colorblind for white. But let's say I was wearing a blue shirt or a green shirt. Is it's objectively true I'm wearing a green shirt? It's like, well, if you're colorblind, no. Colors don't exist in the world in and of itself. They only exist
and this is the cure. That's why I
right, people would say, but obviously it's objectively true. The sky is blue. You know, it's like that's what they cite as an objective fact.
Yeah.
So then they like bend around, and now is it like, well, is objective and subjective two different things? Or are they reconciling? Or
there's just two different tracks to take. Because you can either problematize the dichotomy, or you could like. Which is to unite them, like it's all actually kind of one thing, or they interpenetrate or whatever. Or you can try to like boost up like the inferior side, so called, right? So like, and they do this like even with I'm always reminded because you can critique like Descartes it was pretty hard on the objective versus subjective dichotomy philosophically, and that like he was like there's pure rationality gets to the truth, and everything else is like you can't trust your senses. This whole thing is doubt. It starts from doubt. It's like you can't. It's doubting unless you find the objective truth, kind of, right? But so I'm problematizing that because I'm like, no, like objectivity is like has all these problems and rationality has all these problems or whatever, and the Cartesian dualism is like it's bad because of whatever. But then I was forced to be reminded. I forget who by. I forget who made the argument, but I believed it really intensely. So wait, which author must have this been? Because I really trusted them. I don't remember. But it was just a reminder that the Cartesian objective and subjective duality was also like the early feminism was extremely Cartesian. Because it's like all of these stupid subjective things of like, oh, God says the man has to have a job and the woman can't have a job. They're like, that's not rational. And then like women can be like, enter the sphere of the objective, basically. You know what I mean? And on the grounds of objectivity, be like, this shit is not rational. So it's a tool of empowerment. You know what I mean? So there's that thing, which is kind of like the object, like it's kind of like women entering the superior hemisphere of the objective side of the duality, and this is a feminist movement. And then there's the other version, which is like, wait a second, like objectivity itself is not that valuable? What about the value of emotion? What do we really believe that men are not infected by emotion? You know what I mean? Like, what about the weaknesses you have and the strengths that come from the other side of the duality? So there's another feminist thing, which is like, actually those traditionally archetypically feminine traits are important. So you know what I mean? It's the same thing of either like collapsing it or I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry. This one, I struggle with this. I want to be able to write it down and have it like super clear, so I can do a video or a lecture on it or whatever. But
well, this is a good first draft.
Yeah. That's why it's good to talk to people.
I wanted to go back to the point about Peterson internalizing like the nuclear war conflict or
being
whatnot.
Obsessed with like the highest possible stakes.
Because and this was a problem for me, was I fell into that of like, oh, meaning of life equals responsibility. More meaningful life equals more responsibility you take on.
Right.
Now, the way I interpreted that was, well, what's the biggest responsibility? Global political division, or like political division in my country. That's my problem.
Yeah.
Which, like,
so that's what you dove with your YouTube content. You went right for like transgender issues. And
whatever the issue, whatever the most divisive issue is at the time is by definition the most important issue, because that's the source of the division that needs to be solved.
Right.
So
this is kind of the logical train you're riding. Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's numerous problems with that. Like, number one, there's a significant element of grandiosity. Like, I'm making my YouTube channel is attempting to solve the end of civilization through division.
Yeah, but it also like makes you like lose your humanity, right? Because then like genuinely, it's like you see Jordan Peterson, right? It's like if I'm asking him to use like they them pronouns for me, and he's seeing this at the stakes of this. Like, whether I do this is going to be a binary, either I'm moving us towards the Nazi death camps or I'm moving us towards paradise.
Yeah.
Like, like, it's actually not so fucking complicated sometimes, It
is funny because early on, like, literally when I did this one podcast with my friend, and we talked about someone else, and it was like, and I remember thinking, like, we put it up, and I was like, well, it's already up. I'm not going to take it down because I'm a free speech warrior. I'm not gonna, and it's like, dude, that's such a fucking arrogant way to think about it. The right move was to not have done the podcast to begin with, but to take it down.
So what was that on the podcast? It was personal information?
It was I don't even want to say it now.
So I was gonna say like personal information.
It was about someone's personal struggle that if they were watching it, they would know we were talking about them.
Yeah, right.
Which made obviously would made them uncomfortable and all that.
Yeah.
But I had the mentality of like, well, this is my responsibility, and it's like, well, the problem is, you can take on too much responsibility. And Peterson said this one time, and I was like, "Oh fuck, I didn't internalize that part."
When did he say that?
It was in a Q&A after one of his like biblical lectures or something like that. Right. And he's like, most people's problem is that they don't take on enough responsibility. You can take on too much responsibility, but that's a rare subset. And I was like, "Oh fuck, I might be in that rare subset."
Yeah, interesting.
And I've been over internalizing this. Yeah. But then the other dimension is
that's what I was expressing to you, was like my exhaustion a little bit, like part of what was happening today. Was
assuming too much responsibility.
Yeah. Between like a few like, just between like the things.
Personal things. Yeah.
but and realizing like, oh, I need space to be human. It's funny actually. I will say this part is my mother attended church this morning. I didn't because I have a lot of responsibilities right now. And it's interesting. It was the message was on a kind of like obscure piece of scripture that was like instructions, like kind of Leviticus style, like granular instructions on how to handle the Ark of the Covenant. And so it's just explaining, it's like, you have to carry it like this, and this many people carrying it, and this is what you do with this, this, and this. And there was something where it's like somebody put their hand on it that shouldn't have, and God just struck them down, just dead on the spot. And there was a little bit of a kind of just like, know your place. Like, know your role. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, again, I think that was what we were talking about, is like, don't take on too much responsibility. Like, just do the thing that you're here to do. Don't get fucking, so caught up with your own, like, the epic stakes of all of humanity and all of time, and that you're like spending all day thinking about like the Holocaust. And when the problems that are in front of you are like, you need to like relax and like make a little money and like check in on the people you love, and like maybe host a dinner, or like figure out how to be less stressed at your job, or get a less stressful job, or whatever the fuck. You have problems to solve that aren't the Holocaust.
Right. And it's contextualizing it within the frame of, even if you believe that is your responsibility, it's like, okay, well, what is your first responsibility given that? It's like, become the kind of person who's capable of addressing that somehow. And I certainly have a long way to go before it's like, okay, well, my YouTube video is going to be the thing that, oh my God, this solves the transgender divide. Or, it's like, that's in a small sense, it's like, well, we're having this conversation. I'm stumbling my way towards becoming the kind of person who might have an impact on that long term. But it's like, well, maybe my first responsibility should be like, well, have a family and maintain like a long-term relationship or something like that. Because it's like, that's the foundation with which you learn the basics of things to become the kind of person who can then handle those bigger things. That's and rather than exhausting yourself by going straight for the fucking big kahuna or whatever.
Yeah, and that is a thing with the left that I think they can be better at, and I want to see them be better. And I think I've been seeing signs of that over the previous years, because I was talking with my brother about this just very recently, talking about like an art scene that we were familiar with where there was a real lack of ambition. It's like you go to the art, like the slam poetry read or whatever the fuck, you go into the art scene and all of the art is about how fucked the world is, kind of, and there was no like real and how fucked we are by the world, kind of, and there was not a lot of like ambition or optimism. And even if people actually were like, I want to be big, like I want to be successful, I want money, and like I want these things, that was really frowned upon. Actually, it was like, nah, that shit's all evil and it's all broken and it's all hopeless, right? And it's like, this is a mentality that defeats itself. I remember I was talking to somebody else before too that was like just kind of giving me a what I think is not an uncommon is an autistic person. So they were giving me like a very overly honest and specific version of what I think a lot of people kind of pragmatically play out, which is like, oh, no prime minister of Canada could be like a good prime minister, because in order to become the prime minister, you have to do all these evil things. Your soul, yeah, as soon as you're there, like, so the only kind of person who gets up in power is the kind of evil person that would, try to get all that or whatever. So, and I was like, wait, so you're just committed to being a failure your whole life? Like, that's it? Yeah. That's it? You've made it so that, like, it's impossible for there to be I can't even conceptualize the guy that I would want in charge of my country. I can't even imagine it. I'm like, you have no dream of success. Like, and so I think that part of like this, I was talking to a straight communist one time. That's at the studio, and we both were just like, Jordan Peterson was right at one point, and it was talking about this thing of like, like you need to work on yourself so that you can do this work. You know what I mean? And this is true of the left, I think, is you need to work on yourself, and you need to bring, I think, like basically religion back into the picture. And I mean this in the broadest possible sense. It's like coalition building, what we were talking about earlier, right? You need to have like something more than your like individual authenticity. I want to be honest all the time. You need to have some like you need community. Like the whole fucking leftist project is supposed to be founded on community. Yeah. And so
communism is community
exactly in theory, right? And so so you need to have like a healthy internal life. You need to be able to work on yourself. You need to be able to work on your immediate surroundings and have a community, a healthy community. And you need that so that you can have such a broad community that you can enact some fucking leftism in the world. And so like you can't have it. And so anyways, so basically the clean your room and like repair your relationship with your parents thing, it's like Jordan Peterson's right about that. And it's like, the thing is that's not a right-wing project. And I think that's a lot of what I work on now, is like a lot of what people for some reason on the internet and sometimes in culture over the last like couple decades have grown to be like, like Christianity, that's like a right-wing individualism thing. I'm like, have you read it? Have you read the Gospels? It's not. And people being like, even like artistic excellence or financial success or like even self-improvement, they're like, that's kind of right-wing. Like family, it's like working out right-wing. I'm like, no, it's not.
Working out is right-wing coded.
And I actually thought that was somewhat, this is I think too hard about everything like you do, obviously, right? But when Noah Samson started doing the workout videos and cleaning his apartment stuff, I was like, this is radical. This is radical. Self-help content and like workout content for the left. They like desperately need it because they somehow stumbled into being the party of like, I hate my life and I hate everything.
That I mean, even that specifically is like, well, because you know what working out implies, right? It implies that being fit is an objectively better state than being unhealthy, or it implies fat phobia or something like that.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. And it's all. And the left's problem is that it's built on compassion, and compassion is easily whether it's manipulated or pointed in the wrong direction. Of like, you can be genuinely compassionate, But then it's like, I mean, Peterson talks about this. It's like, you need to discipline children. There's the right way to do it, obviously, but like, it's not just compassion. Oh, have another cookie type thing. It's like, it's not just reflexive empathy. And I do think a lot of the...
Yeah, like love includes like, by, I remember I was actually talking to like, I don't know if I should say, whatever, but I was talking, he would say it. It's like, I was talking to Greg about this. It was like a personality kind of difference in us is like, I think this is a major thing that's in one of my next lectures is like that relationships with people. I think in online like accountability culture and broadly, it's like people these days will really come down on you for like, you believe this morally, but then you have a friend who like gets involved with that, and then you're like you don't cut off the friendship, and like the true moral thing would be if you cut them off, and you're a hypocrite, and you're like, oh, you cover for your friends if you're still kind of in relationship with them, even, you know what I mean, to any degree, like. This is why I feel like, you said like it's a horrible like that, Destiny manages his like sexual romantic personal life like a maniac in a way it was repulsive that's breaking the thing that he wanted to build, and to then go try to like come for Kyla for like believing in his best self and like wanting to try to work on that and like hoping for that to come for her. It's like, it's so like gross to me. Because I think that's one of those things is like being in relationship with people does suspend your morality. That's a feature, not a bug. Yep. It's like absolutely beautiful actually, because when you're like, I don't like gay people, and then you find out that your kid is gay, and then you're like, I love my kid. And then you meet your kids, and then you meet your kid's partner, and you're like, they're fine. And then you're like, I'm changing my mind about this. It's like, love does rewrite your morality. That's salvation.
Coming into contact with reality rids you of your ideological predispositions that are wrong.
Oh, I think so. That's true in the rational level, but I mean in the relational level. I think it's a holy thing that relationships suspend your morality, and that's what Jesus' story was. Is he shirked the letter of religious law for favor of personal human relationship in its
spirit
fullest.
Of the law.
Yeah, exactly. The letter of the law for spirit of the law. And so, why am I saying that? There's a reason I'm saying that.
Relationships are where God is. God is relationship.
Well, that's true.
Well, that's obvious. Jesus Christ.
It was Greg being like. I was explaining this to Greg, this concept that I was working on for one of my lectures, and he was like talking about how like if JJ ran a kid over with his car, would he report him? And Greg was like, nah. He was like, maybe if you ran over like 3 kids with a car, and he thought there was gonna be more coming. And that's his personality, is that like my relationships are like changing my morality in a way. Like my relationships are more important than me like proving myself a perfect moral agent by loyalty to abstract principles that are devoid of any context or relationality. And then I'm the kind of person that I'm just personality type that's like, I would, if someone like, hit a kid with their car, I'd be like, I think for the best for you. Like you should, face accountability, right?
And like that in your relationship, you should want the best for the best part of that person. Yeah. And unless that person is genuinely a psychopath, technically,
but even if they are a psychopath.
Well, in that case, I don't even know if you could I don't know if that person is capable of even relationship formate. It'd be like having a relationship with a feral dog.
And again, here I'll be like, listen.
I mean, like in the most clinical sense, not
and in the clinical sense,
like small amygdala.
And what I'm gonna say
type of shit.
is, in the clinical sense, I don't know nobody. I don't know the definition of psychopathy and what you're talking about, and I don't know anybody. So I have no human application. So to me, it's not worth having an opinion on.
Because there is a line between are you like enablement versus right, and that is a fair. And
that's just a forever conflict, though, right? That's a perennial problem. So when people try to solve it, I'm like, guys, you're not being human right now.
So pointing that out, like, oh, this is enabling behavior. It's like, well, how do you?
More than that, in online accountability culture, it's that you're an enabler.
Yeah, right.
It's that now you're in a category. You're now innately something.
Right, and like the only person. First off, God only in the final analysis do you know is it enablement or what do you call it, like relationship, prioritizing the relationship, and it's all case by case, and only those people know, and so
and even the case by case thing. This is the thing, right? In the final analysis, in the case by case thing, is insinuating that there's a correct one. But like we just don't know what it is.
Yeah, right.
But the thing is, I'm like, these are so human. I'm like, I don't know if there is a correct one. You can't strike
or when in doubt, lean towards the like you can enable a drug addict, obviously, in very practical ways, right? Like, oh, you know, I'll let him steal, or when I won't do this and stuff. But it's like, if it is, I want the best for you, then you would clamp down and not enable, quote unquote. But
I don't know. But even that though, right? Like,
you should meet some heroin addicts who steal your money.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I was gonna
go with lighter shades of like people that drink a lot.
Sure.
You know what I mean, it's like, but do you want a relationship with them? And like, you know what I mean? Like,
true. Yeah, you can't moralize to them, right?
But because again, even that, it's like just having more shades, like the I don't know, just being human. There's two things that I think are really interesting ones. One was Sam Harris writing about his friendships with like Jordan Peterson or like Elon Musk and stuff, where he says this kind of thing. I started listening to Sam Harris because of the Jordan Peterson research stuff.
Nice.
And then like, I don't know, even though I don't agree again with everything he says, right? It's against this broader coalition. I'm like, you know, it's a person that I disagree with, the kind of person that I disagree with that I want to listen to.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's one of the things he said is like, I don't know, like the ethical gradients of like, you know, it's a friend, so I'm not want to take this public and fight about this, and I want to keep this relationship versus I need to stick to my moral principles and hold people accountable. It's like, I don't know. It's just, I still don't know. And one that I thought was really beautiful that again, people are kind of clowning on, but like, is Casey Neistat's documentary about David Dobrik. Do you know what this?
I know who David Dobrik is, and I know who Casey Neistat is.
And Casey Neistat.
I know that David Dobrik got in that whole controversy about
problem
covering for his
and
other
Casey
friend.
Neistat was, oh yeah, that's one of them. The other one is the case where he just hurt someone physically.
Oh no!
Yeah, he just like disabled someone for life, kind of like not like.
Wait, is that the guy with the eye thing or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, Casey Neistat was making a documentary about David Dobrik, and then all this happened. So the documentary turned into about this, and there's this interview snippet. It's just incredible to me of Casey Neistat. Like people are like, it's like, why won't you release it? It's done, and he hasn't dropped it. And it's done and it's good, and he hasn't dropped it. And they're asking about it, and he's like. You know, like I made it and I thought it was right to make it kind of about this and the trappings of fame. It started to be about incredible fame and then it became about like the trappings of fame. And I thought it was only right to like, you know, let the victims like say their piece and then let David say his piece. And he did at length and it didn't go well. He didn't look good. But this is the truth. This is this movie. And now I'm just like, is this worth my friendship? This is worth my relationship? And he's just sitting like, I don't know. And of course, the internet is like, drop it, because what a coward, what a hypocrite, because they're like, just want to see a blood like sport event. Of course, like everyone wants to see that. And they're like, why aren't you just being moral and sticking to? But I think it's so beautiful. He's so honest. He's like, I'm uncomfortable. It's like, I don't know why I'm not dropping it. So I'm just sitting here looking at this thing that's like, it's like a, you know, it seems like the truth, and it looks really bad for someone that I loved. And
the whole, you know, because I've been on YouTube for 4 years. I don't know if I consider myself a public figure. I'm certainly public enough, saying that Israel maybe did 9/11 on Destiny's podcast.
I don't like that you're saying it on this podcast. I don't know if this is on yours or mine.
But it has made me think more about like, okay, like for example, FT Signifier. We talked about this. It's like I asked FT Signifier.
The fact you can even say like you're talking to like Destiny and FT Signifier. I'm saying it's an attest to your unique authenticity as a centrist. You really prioritize it.
Yeah, well,
again, it's pragmatic, right? Is that you work you work to make sure you have the ears of leftists. Like you will change yourself to make sure that you achieve that pragmatic outcome.
Right.
I just respect it.
Yeah. And it's like with FD, I asked him if he has any conservative friends or anyone in his life. He's like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So let's say, like, I disagree with some of what FT Signifier has to say, which, to be clear, I definitely disagree with some of what FT Signifier has to say. It's like, well, what is the proper way to do that pragmatically? Is it to make a video criticizing FT Signifier? Here's why FT is wrong. He's stupid. He's what is it? That on the one hand, that would, in some sense, that's more honest because I'm like, here's what he said, and here's what I honestly think about what he said.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
But if the goal is not say what I think is true propositionally.
Yeah. I was gonna say, when you said that, in some way it's more honest, and I was gonna be like, in a propositional sense. That's
exactly, but like, if the truth is trying to, you know, if I think he's wrong, get him to, you know, see what I see about it.
If that's your goal, I want him to see what I see.
Then I'm gonna go, well, maybe my role here is not to condemn or criticize him publicly, even though that, you know, that's one way to do it. It's like, well, maybe I should be FD's conservative friend, you know, and it's like,
my life,
and I'm happy to play that role, and it's like. I also just like being the Klaus Schwab of, you know, YouTube politics.
What's that?
You know who Klaus Schwab is?
No. We have a different list
This
of
is
kind
like
of cultural
This is like
reference
imagine if we were having a conversation and you mentioned Karl Marx. I'm like, who?
Okay.
Like what Marx is to the leftist worldview. Not. I mean, I'm over exaggerating.
That's fine. Yeah.
Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, the globalist conspiracy, the globalist entity, Davos, the people who are chemically castrating people through the BPAs in the water bottles. We talked about that earlier. But my point is like Klaus Schwab is pulling the strings behind a lot of like the idea is he's not out in public so much giving speeches, but like
okay.
And that's what I'm gonna try and do is pull the strings.
More powerful.
I know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's good. And I always say like I said to you like that the biggest like credit to your project or whatever is that you got in FD's head.
Yeah.
Is that he didn't really want to like you?
Which is funny because I criticized his video. He made a video criticizing Jordan Peterson, and I think he said some things that were just dumb, and I said as much. And first off, I didn't think he would see it, and I never did it in a way that was like, well, if he sees it, would it be convincing him? And I'm actually kind of surprised. It's a testament to him that he was open-minded enough to even continue to like listening.
Yeah.
But again, because it's like, well, I'm not changing what I believe per se to get to him. I'm changing what particular propositional autistic truth I might say in any given time.
Sure.
Which is different because it's like part of I think why he respected me is because I was critical of Jordan Peterson and I said, I like the maps meaning stuff. This shit's insane. Here's the 3 reasons why he's ridiculous. And I saw FD mention that in a different conversation one time of like, he basically broke down how there's like the religious Jordan Peterson, the self-help, and the political.
Sure.
And the religious and self-help are good and the political is kind of off the rails sometimes.
That's one way you could...
Right, which is what I honestly believe. And that, and that goes back to like, well, I believe that you should say what you believe to be true as best as you can and see what happens, right? And there's all kinds of qualifications, nuance to that, because like we just said, there's propositional truth, and I'm saying what's propositionally true, but it's like...
And also, which truth out of the infinity of things? And also, and the biggest one I think is, do you know the truth? And
exactly.
Do you know the truth of what you think?
Yeah.
And do you even know what you actually think or feel?
Right.
I think that's another problem.
Or the best thing that Jonathan Haidt pointed out is like, what does it feel like to be wrong? It feels exactly the same as being right. Finding out that you were wrong is like a bad feeling or shitty, but like while you're wrong the whole time,
that's pretty funny.
You don't know. It's the exact same feeling. So like
that's why I started talking about Leela, like having a sense of play and even role play. You even actually use the word of FD. It's like, do I need to give him a piece of my mind? And it's like, no, it's like what role am I going to play here?
Right.
You know? And not perceiving that as dishonesty or like inauthenticity, because I think like Byung-Chul Han talks about in the Disappearance of Rituals, covering right now in book club, right? This cult of authenticity. Like that's the most important thing to be. And I think it also defines authenticity as me asserting kind of my subjective truth constantly and spitting it out there
in a propositional way.
Yeah.
Cult of authenticity equals hyper autism.
Sure.
Say whatever is being said.
I don't know, but the like
I'm not
the
asking you to
autism,
condone it. I know.
schizophrenia thing.
I talked about it with J-Rag. We
you and J-Rag can do that all you want.
Yeah,
right? For me, I don't know about the whole.
Listen, you don't get to go through life without paying a price. Okay, you have to choose the price you pay, and I'm willing to choose the price of being labeled ableist for that for a variety of reasons. That you can watch the J-Rag podcast if you want to hear.
If you want to hear more edgy stuff from P.F. Young, you can probably talk to the J-Rag podcast.
We can go edgy right now if you want.
No, thank you.
I know.
Yeah. And I think the role play thing in the
I was talking about being like Klaus Schwab and like not shitting on FD outright, but just saying what I believe to be true. And like,
I was going to say something about you as a person, and we'll do it after these messages.
I do have to piss.
BetterHelp is yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to talk about non-binary. Do you?
What?
I don't want to talk about non-binary.
No, I don't give a shit about
Me
that.
neither. Okay. We already talked about it.
This is again another Jordan Petersonism. Is like when he like asserts that's like the thing that kind of almost like what you said, the thing that makes you most uncomfortable is the thing that the thing you least want to look at is the thing you have to look at. It's like that's not true. What are you talking about?
Well, it's true in an existential sense.
Like it's sometimes, but like I just feel like it's like,
yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like this is a waste of time.
Again, it's against humanity. It's like abandoning like these stakes and like this moral
well,
quest.
yeah, I mean,
because like
you could also
because like you know what I mean. Like, isn't it beautiful that it's again in relationship? This is another thing. Like, I remember I had a fight with somebody where we had a fight over a thing that kept happening and it blew up quickly, and then a couple days later, like I called them like because we were like gonna talk about it, and I was like, I decided like I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, my point, like, it doesn't matter. Like, can we just, like, not and, like, just be nice to each other? And, and they're like, yeah, that was it. That was the end.
Well, but that's the problem. Both of you have to work under the assumption of I'm not going to put my abstract beliefs above relationship.
Yeah, that's true.
And I do think that, and that's...
But also
that's specifically a problem. It's not even just. It's not.
But sometimes
it's classically
people
associated.
are also like open to that, even if they don't think they're open to that. When they're just presented, like if you don't buy into their frame of like I want to be right, and instead you give them this alternative frame of like I don't care anymore. Like and you just like are kind. You know what I mean? I think it's really important to really let things go and not get caught up in your own like delusions with each other. Your like mutual hysteria that you get into. You know what I mean? Well, like there was us too. It's just like I don't talk about non-binary stuff. And
this even gets into like we'll go back to the like influencer Klaus Schwab type. I'd rather it's like
whoever that is. Yeah, I guess we should get into that for the remainder of the thing.
Just chemical castration. But it's like and I specifically what you're talking about with like you forget how you mentioned it earlier, but for me, one thing that really shaped how I view political disagreement in context of relationships is I had super progressive friends who, I would be like, yeah, I might vote for Trump over Bernie, blah, blah, blah. Like not to like rub it in their face or whatever.
You like just meant it.
Yeah. And there was one instance where I was at a friend's house. It was mostly my progressive friend group. And I said that almost offhand because it came up or whatever. And this one kid was like, what did you say? And like started going around and be like, fuck Paul, fuck this. He would like go to, there was like probably 15, 20 people at it was like a house party type thing.
And he got to everybody?
And he would like bring him in a little group and be like, I'm so uncomfortable right now because Paul's... And the thing was, everyone was like, yo, cut that shit, like to him, right? It was like, cut that shit out, yo. This is... And it's interesting because he was acting out what in theory, well, if Paul's considering voting for a fascist... Well, that's the right thing to do is be like, cut them out. And I just saw how ineffective it was and how the people around him who at least are in propositional sense would agree with that. Like that guy is a fascist and people support him or supporting fascism. Yeah. We're like, what are you doing? And it was that dissonance I noticed.
There's other information, like, and they don't, like, again, it's like, this isn't something that's happening on paper, it's happening in real life, and people are using their full information, right? And this is one thing you said, like, props to FD for, like, engaging with you the way that he has, and part of that is because, again, it's because it's a full-grown man. It's because he's not so brain-poisoned by the internet, and he has a family, and he has, like, relationships and, like, a life, right? So he has all this embodied knowledge that even if, like, when he's talking about it, he'd be like, he might be like, I don't know, whatever the fuck. The point is that he has this knowledge that's like integrated into the way he does things. And we're also at this point of the internet where we're very suspicious of some of the absolutism and different things that have happened before. And so he has the benefit of that too. Anyway, sorry. That's what I'm saying is that the knowledge that's in the body, the social knowledge, kicked in.
The procedural
exactly,
knowledge.
Right, because this wasn't a logical thing that just happened there.
Correct.
It was human beings.
Arguably, if you're just looking at it logically.
Right, so that guy's being logical is what I mean. But what's happening in the party, the room, was they're not doing logic on him. They're not being like, hey, think about this. They're in bodies and they're here and they're like, this isn't right. I already know this isn't right.
And I would always pose that point to my friends. Was like, if you think I'm a fascist, why are we friends? Right? And they're like, They couldn't answer it.
I think the thing that, and for me, which was kind of relevant, if like at this point, like you have to accept, even if you're like, let's say you're me, right? And let's say I have a significantly more negative valence in my perception of Donald Trump, right, than you do. Let's say, like,
which in many ways we do have the same negative valence, but yes, overall, overall, I'm happy it was him versus Kamala, like straight up.
Understood, right? Yeah. So like the point being that like I feel that way, and so I have this like baseline, like it would be anyone except for Trump for some of these deep reasons, right? And for me, some of them are very like religious and cultural, like not even necessarily like political, But the point is that I can feel this way, and that's okay. But like how do I say this? Well, I don't know. It's not unusual to like Donald Trump. It's actually the most popular opinion.
I'm clipping that alone and just CJ endorses.
It's not an endorsement, but it is literally true. And that's something that other people need to get through their fucking heads. It's not unusual to like Donald Trump. It's not unusual to vote for Donald Trump. It's actually right now the most popular thing to do.
It's actually less unusual than otherwise. I mean,
yeah, so you gotta. I mean, if your like only modus operandi is to treat like people who like Donald Trump as like these kind of shocking beasts that crawl out of sewers that like need to be eliminated,
live life that way. See what happens.
They're outvoting you.
Yeah.
So that your strategy has to change at least by the second time. It's like your life has to change.
Well, it's funny, and it's funny because this. So let's say you think
and mine does. Sorry, again, to be clear, this is the foundations of democracy thing. Is I think again, like people think that wearing one particular agency, like such as the one that I'm wearing when I'm speaking with you right now, is like that means that I've compromised my perfect authenticity, like myself. I'm like, I'm different in different rooms. I know how to have different kinds of conversations about different things. You know, I don't think that you need to debase yourself morally and in terms of your honesty to have different kinds of conversations with different kinds of people.
Yeah, well, we talked about this yesterday. It's like one of the golden rules for therapists is if your client uses like the N-word or some crazy shit, you don't judge them for it. Huh?
Which one?
Which one what?
The N-word?
Yeah. Yeah, or the Z-word, Zog. You don't judge like you don't judge like cuz obviously I know people like this who are like basically schizophrenic using that terminology, all that type of shit. The therapist is supposed to create a space of non-judgment, right? And you like it is a good idea to embody that to some degree where it's like, okay, if you know the person that you're talking to, all good?
Keep going. Yeah,
if you know the person that you're talking to is deranged in some some degree, what do you get by just being like, oh, you said this, fuck you, like fuck in that moment when no one's around? You know, it's like, are you living up to your morals, or are you just for achieving nothing? Is it just inflating your own ego? Like, look, even when it earned me nothing or gained me nothing, or actually reduced the likelihood that I would take this person away from their belief. Yeah, I went with the judgmental thing. And
I do, and also it's like there is something to that, like your moral integrity, even when there's no reward, even when there's nothing around. Like I do understand that.
Totally.
Of course, right?
Who you are is who you are when no one's looking. Like I believe that. That's like karma. You know,
it's also religious too. It's like don't believe people that pray in front of crowds in front.
Yeah, exactly. And what you practice, what you become, all that stuff. So, it's all a complex balance of things. Even in the context of the,
I think you were saying the sentence Trump is a fascist.
Yeah, Trump is a fascist.
And if you support Trump, you're also a fascist.
Correct. Yes. But if you think all Trump supporters are fascist, then you're gonna let's say you go to a dinner party, and you meet someone and you've been talking to them for 10 minutes. You're like, oh, I get along with this guy. Yeah. And then you find out he voted for Trump. Like, well, now are you obligated to treat this guy bad because in your mind he's bad? And it's easy to do it from the Trump perspective. I have to do it from the other perspective of, like, my ex-girlfriend had a lot of super progressive queer friends, like that whole thing. And there was some people with unconventional pronouns, let's say, and I remember being like a moral qualm of me, like not nice, but I'm like, what am I gonna stick to my principles and not say this out of pure? Yeah. But it was like, and I met one of her friends, and we had a great conversation about like Robert Sapolsky. The YouTube lectures about human behavioral biology.
Oh yeah, those.
Yeah, and
let's talk about like what transgender psychology or whatever, right?
Well, he does mention that, but there's like 16 of them.
No, there's a whole thing, but there's also that one. Sorry, I thought we were on pronouns and your unwillingness to use them.
Well, what I'm saying is that person appreciated the Robert Sapolsky behavioral as much as I did. Yeah. And had I been all like, well, I'm not going to call them a they them or whatever. Yeah. I would have denied myself that conversation.
Deny yourself that relationship.
Right. Like, and then also it's like, this is the more cynical side of it is, well, it kind of then it puts the thing on them to be like, well, wait, Paul doesn't like using those pronouns though. He's voting for Trump. Yeah. But he showed me good grace. So now I'm the one that's like, well, fuck. Now I got to be the dick.
Yeah. And I think this is maybe one of the things that was the thing I was trying to remember to say was actually that like, and this is me going back to kind of culture crafting, right?
Yeah.
And culture as status games between different communities that can be conceptualized as different kinds of status. Different communities that could be conceptualized as as status hierarchies, or like different kinds of hierarchies of values, right? What's interesting, again, it's like, what was I gonna say? Is that when you make a video about FD, if you're like, and he's wrong about this and this and right? It's like, is that interesting? Like, the thing is, you don't even have to say it because of the way you look. And because of and on a deeper level, because of the other kinds of videos that are on your channel, you already have a bunch of videos that clearly kind of indicate where you and FD will have a disagreement, right? Culturally or like intellectually or politically or whatever. And so what becomes kind of more interesting to play with, I think, is, and you do this in something that I think is interesting, and you've done it with me before, and I like that this has happened with me with some like conservatives, is that they're like, they will use me as a reference on the thing, right? It's interesting when like to counter signal against, like, you know, to use like both like the words you're saying as the information, let's say at the party, the words you're saying, and then the context of the human embodied thing. So there's the propositional thing you're doing, and then there's like the embodied actual like body information. Like all of it is communication, and you treat all of it kind of like an art, and like a pragmatic art and a self-expressive art in a way that you kind of build and craft your identity. Then it is really interesting when you, with all of your cultural signifiers and everything that's already there, is you like reference me or FD signifier positively, and you start taking like, and here's a quote from Philosophy Tube that's 100% right or whatever, and you just start doing that, then it gives people a little bit like it just gets interesting and complicated, and you become a little more like powerful, you know what I mean? It's interesting, and I tried to do a similar thing where
so you do with Jordan Peterson.
I do with Jordan Peterson. I also like show like clips of, like, if they're relevant, I'll show like a Dave Chappelle clip. I'm like, yeah, fuck you, you know what I mean? And like, because I'm not trying to sanitize all of my cultural references, basically. I remember I made a bit one time too where I think I showed like Marjorie Taylor Greene doing like, there's two genders, and it was like and like that was the joke in the video. But even that, right, is kind of like this vaguely positive comedic reference to a political figure I find abhorrent, like a cultural figure that, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, it's not up to like, you know, a demonstration of my like moral purity, which cultural reference I'm going to use in my like language or whatever. And again, those signals, right? So when you, with all that you are confident enough to allow yourself to occupy another agency, even temporarily, and you don't feel like this debases you on some profound moral level, it's like you're more interesting. You will wear more hats. Like you, if you can manage to, I had this. This is just totally insane. The Jordan Peterson video obviously has taken on a lot of different forms, and at one point I had it conceptualized around a quote from 1984.
Language police. No.
It's a quote. It was my favorite quote, something that just stuck with me when I read it. And this isn't in the thing now, so like it didn't stick. But I was almost like positively referencing something that Big Brother says, which was like when he's like, you know, trying to argue against the totalitarian state, and the totalitarian state has kind of like already thought through everything that, like all the kind of disagreements with the totalitarian state. There's this moment where he goes like, his mind contains mine. And it's like this helpless, like I've been crushed, right? And
it shows the power of Big Brother.
Yeah, and I was almost saying like that's what I'm gonna do to Jordan Peterson right now. But it is
that's
kind
so
of
interesting.
I do think it's powerful if you are like, and this is something that whatever. In Jordan Peterson's first argument with Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson's mind, he can understand Sam Harris's point of view and say it back to him, but Sam Harris can't play the other agency. So I was like, Jordan Peterson's mind contains yours right now, and it's quite a move to do. That is an interesting way to frame it. When you can do that at a party, it's like I can do the pronoun thing. Like I'm strong enough to do that, you know. And then I'm strong enough to do that and not be corrupted too, like Avatar ending style.
I'm
just saying it makes someone interesting. You know what I mean?
Well, the mind contains the other mind idea. That is the what was the example I was going to use? It specifically came up. This is a weird kind of reference, but like I took an Intro to Islam class.
Okay.
And in the Quran, they have, I think it's the second surah, which is like the second book. There's a whole list of things because Islam is very sort of fundamentalist. It's not as easily reformed as other religions, just because of the nature of...
There's some principal tenets about not changing things
and one of them
original
is,
language and such.
It says, beware of reformers. Here are all of the arguments they're going to make. This book is old. Should we believe as they did 1,000 years ago? Which is like, that's kind of valid. So it pre-programmed everyone with like, here's all the things that they're going to say.
It contains its...
So so it's like, damn, at minimum... whoever wrote this book, even if they were wrong, they're competent enough to know exactly what the arguments were going to be against it.
Yeah, of course, it's kind of a work of genius.
Yeah.
At the very least, right? That's the
Yeah, totally. And the other example I was going to use is, I think you said, because Jordan Peterson was able to do that with Sam, but not vice versa. I think the same is true for Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins.
In which way? That Richard Dawkins can't figure out.
Richard Dawkins was like, you're drunk on symbols, you're drunk on symbols, you're drunk on symbols. He's just all propositional truth, objective truth.
And it's true that Jordan Peterson, in his age and this era, has become a little more like belligerent and not very socially like aware or whatever.
True.
Right? So he's more willing, he's less willing to even demonstrate his understanding of like scientific truth or the scientific perspective because he's so. You know what I mean? We know like Jordan Peterson, of course, can just be a scientist and just represent that kind of way of thinking.
Right.
Pretty excellently. He's just not willing to do it anymore because he gets mad at Richard Dawkins. Yeah.
And it's so self-defeating. It's like...
And Richard Dawkins, and that's the thing, with Richard Dawkins, like he can't even as an intellectual exercise, even as play, he can't occupy Jordan Peterson.
I don't care, he said. I don't care about that. It's like, well, dude, it's exactly as obtuse when Peterson is like, hey... Or Alex O'Connor asks him, hey, were Cain and Abel real people? I get that you don't think that's important, and maybe you're right, and maybe we should not devote attention to that.
Well, Alex O'Connor is completely like...
I love Alex O'Connor. I think Alex O'Connor, you and like... I don't know, I was going to say Ryan Chapman maybe, but Ryan Chapman hasn't been making as many videos.
I'm very flattered, by the way. This is another thing, too.
Or like top tier.
Of course I'm flattered by you. Again, for the same like non-rational reason why I would like associate with whomever that I disagree with. I'm like, it just flatters me.
I know.
It's very complimentary to me. It's
really, I'm just trying to flatter and queerbait your audience. But listen, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Alex O'Connor.
I would
say Alex O'Connor is like as dedicated to like kind of truly occupying and like someone else's mind and containing other people's mind as you are committed to like the sort of like division, like trying to unify or whatever. And as Jordan Peterson is to like Nazi death camps or whatever.
Did you
or I guess Soviet Russia is the only thing he talks about.
Yeah. Did you see? I saw a short from Alex O'Connor. It was great, and I almost never.
I don't watch shorts.
I know you're. Yeah, that's fair.
Every once in a while, can I tell you the truth? Every once in a while, a short will come up, and it's like a sexy, like thing of like a pop star on a stage, and I'm like sex brain. I'm like, I watch it. That's happened like maybe 3 times in my life. I was just like, mortal. It's like it's just like Dua Lipa doing something kind of suggestive, and I'm like, I'll check it.
You'd think after 10,000 times of seeing like a hot girl in a bikini or dancing or something like that, you'd be like, this is old. It's like, it doesn't really get old.
It's the fusion of like the laziness and the clicking, and I'm in the middle of working, and then it's just and there's a short, and this is a stupid.
There's also a technical term. I think it's called latent inhibition, where there's certain things that you never get habituated to, like looking at fire, watching like animals play, like watching children play.
Like they hotness. Always kind of have the same salience to you. Like
it's like there's a habituation. Like if you poke a snail once, it'll go back in its shell. If you do it twice, it'll go back in its shell. But if you keep doing it, it eventually just won't. It gets habituated. Yeah. There's certain
like
things.
The rat.
Yeah, like the rat. Yeah. There's certain things that are There's certain things that never. It's called latent. I think it's called something like latent inhibition that never go away. And like beauty is one of them. Like no matter how many times you see it, it doesn't get old.
Right.
Anyway, I completely.
Sex.
Yeah, but it was before that. What was that?
It's like naked bodies. That's probably what YouTube.
Wait, shorts?
Latent inhibition.
Alex O'Connor. I saw a short from Alex O'Connor. I rarely ever. I know naked Alex. What? I rarely ever will see a short and then go look up the YouTube video.
Yeah.
But it was Alex O'Connor.
I've had to do that sometimes with Jordan Peterson shorts, like from like content farms, and I have to find the source for something. I'm like, fuck.
Yep. But Alex O'Connor was walking through this super logical progression of like, and very like a steel man of, hold on. What explains the resurrection? Mm-hmm. Like, what all these people lied? Generally, people don't die for their beliefs that they know are lies. Yeah. So it's like, what is that? Group hallucination? That's never happened in history. Like, and he gives a much more like Steelman kind of. Then he says, so the only option, like, maybe he did rise from the dead. And I was like, fuck, hold on, does he believe this? So I looked it up. Then I saw the other half of that where he's like, notice what I did. I went through a series of just like a checklist. It couldn't be this, so it must be this.
Yeah.
But I just decided where to terminate it.
Exactly, yeah.
So I could have done...
You invented that.
Yeah, I could have done, did they all lie? No one dies for their beliefs. Well, what, did he rise from the dead? Well, that's never happened. So it must be group hallucination.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was like, God damn, that's to your point, it's like, that makes him so much more interesting because
it does.
He did the best possible argument of the people he disagrees with.
Yeah, of course. There's something really like deep about Steelmanning when you actually do it. And there's something profound about how Jordan Peterson can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's
like it's a deep. There's something about it.
You know
right?
what? This is my hot take. I've said this before. I think I have some faith he will leave the Daily Wire. Only because forget.
I can see that.
Forget anything.
I could see that. I could see that.
Forget any of the ideology of the Daily Wire that I may or may not disagree with. When they let go or when they got rid of Candace and then more recently Brett Cooper. She's like this. Do you know who that is?
She's cute.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've never seen her speak.
She's very normie coded. My very progressive ex-girlfriend loved Brett Cooper, and I was like, okay, we need more Brett Coopers in the world.
Really? The progressive people like Brett Cooper?
At least one of them.
I think I've seen that. I saw Brett Cooper. I'm like, she's cute. I should probably never hear her speak.
yeah.
That happens sometimes.
But they got rid of her, and I think her and Candace, and they made her sign NDAs, I believe.
Because they were too much?
They didn't, I don't know, they're a business.
How did the progressive person like the Brett Cooper then?
Because conservatism is correct, and progressivism is all fucking bullshit from feminist
who I can never help but liking, no matter what, is just Shoe on Head. I can't help tune in.
Shoe on Head's good.
Every time. She's really
Shoe on Head's a radical centrist. Shoe on Head is what did I give her? I gave her A tier Enlightened centrist. When I did the 2023 Enlightened centrist tier list, it was you and Jordan Peterson were S tier, and I think Shoe on Head was probably an A tier. I would have put her in A tier.
Yeah.
Well, but Jordan Peterson, Daily Wire, the whole NDA thing, it's like, dude, that's very antithetical to free speech. Like, if you have a problem, hash it out, right?
Of this, like, kind of decadent free-for-all free speech that they're kind of attesting to, basically.
Yeah, and my thing is just, it seems so... I genuinely do believe Peterson's conscience eats at him, like, for sure. Like, that's the whole...
Yeah.
Adopting responsibility of the whole Holocaust or whatever. Like, that's his problem.
He's definitely getting eaten up by something.
Yeah. And also...
Whether that's the highest morality or something else. He's just always eating himself. You can see it in his eyes.
Maybe he got dinner with RFK Jr. and got the same brainworms or something like that. But or even the Netanyahu thing. It's like almost no one, even the most ardent pro-Israel people, are not pro-Netanyahu. And the fact that Peterson had like a decent relationship with him, ostensibly, I believe that's got to be eating at him to some degree. But anyway... Alex O'Connor.
So you think maybe he could be one day?
Huh?
So you think maybe Jordan Peterson could leave the Daily Wire one day?
I think so. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it, but I have some level of faith.
He just needs to take a break and shut the fuck up, and he won't. He never will.
And I do,
I can't trust people that never go quiet and never go, I don't know, and never start being like, I'm just gonna stop performing my whole life and like investigate my own life.
The rebuttal to that would be, well, if you listen to him, he's always qualifying like, well, I don't know for sure, but I don't know for sure. And that is a good practice, that genuinely is, but that does give license.
It's kind of like saying that like, Destiny, I feel like you know what I mean? Because it's like, you don't know, but you never shut the fuck up.
Right, Destiny does the same thing, by the way. And and I know that's what a Destiny fan would use to defend Destiny. It's like, well, if you listen to him, he always says like he might not know.
That's the thing, is if you are a super fan of Jordan Peterson, like you or me, I guess, because I listen to so much and I transcribe. I have like that document is just hundreds of pages of long.
Really?
Yeah, of just
that
pure
you've taken notes?
Transcribing, yeah. I did it personally, and there's links to like almost every so much. It's insane. But like so it's like there's tons of qualifiers. You can always find some time over his never shutting the fuck up career from the age of 30 all the way till now. You can always find him saying like a lot of different things. He always like makes an exception of a place, like a person does. But again, it's like look at the trends, the pragmatic bring, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything you wanna?
Meme wars. You wanna do the meme wars thing?
Meme wars.
I don't know, culture crafting. That's the one thing.
Yeah, art versus...
What are you working on? So like, okay, so you call it applied sociology.
Yeah.
Did you make that up? Kind of.
Yeah. It's
really funny.
Academic.
Yeah, it's really funny. Applied sociology,
meme smithing, culture crafting. I like culture crafting though.
Thank you for liking culture crafting. You're the first person I ever connected to on this one. Some thoughts are germinating to me, and they're kind of private, and I don't know if like they're good to put out in the world yet. But then when I sometimes talk to the right person, like that communist I was talking to, where we were like on some degree Jordan Peterson's right. Like we were talking about, that was when I was like, I think Christianity, like I think that the left needs religious revival, and Christianity is particularly suited to do it. And Donald Trump is kind of this sacrilegious element, and so I think there's a bizarre opportunity for the left to become the party of like sacred family values, responsibility, and community and stuff, and morals, basically.
And cultural crafting is that between you and
where I said it and you're like, oh yeah, because sometimes you're not sure about an idea until it links up to someone else's heart.
Well, so actually it's interesting because I wrote a post at the beginning of the year. I said I've been having sort of an identity crisis with the channel. What do I want? What am I? I'm not a political commentator. I don't care enough to comment like...
Not morality. Sorry, I said morality is one of the things in like the Christianity left thing, but not morality, because I realize I'm problematizing morality for sake of kind of humanity. Anyways, whatever. Sorry.
But like, what do you call it? I'm not a political commentator. I have less than zero interest in, Trump and Kamala had a debate. What are my reactions to this debate or whatnot? It's like, I don't care. That's mind virus eating stuff. But your video, the Lila one, the 6 Shapes of God or 7 Shapes of God or however many Shapes of God there are, you explicitly, I think I even timestamped it in my notes, was like, you specifically call out, like, if you are not enjoying the process of creation, like creating the art, then you're screwed. Basically, it was something to that effect. I got that was the message I got from it. Of like,
there was something that I was missing from that video that I only figured out a little bit afterwards. Or actually, I think I included it, but like I cut it for like because it wasn't eloquent and it wasn't serving the broader thing. But it's that like you create art. The reason you do things is not to have them done necessarily, but it is to be the one who does the thing. It's to be something. Again, it's like the Leela thing. It's like the reason that I, again, like do my taxes is not to get the thing done and then I avoid more, like that's adversarial mindset, is like bad things, good things, I suffer bad things to get to the good things and the bigger good things for more suffering, and to me it's like, nah, you do the taxes to be a taxpayer, like this is part of life, you know?
Yes.
It's like to be like, this is the world I live in, I want to feel connected to it, this is what my country expects from me and I want to be a citizen, you know what I mean? It's like to reform like the motivations.
So you're saying you're a taxpayer and
like and so
do the thing,
and this is the brain cure for me with my music, is I'm not trying to make the music to get the album done and be at that place. It's like I need to be like, because this is my fucking life. Like the seconds I spend in my life are my life, and if it's suffering for reward, sacrifice for bounty, it's like that's not a life worth living. I don't want to live it. And so for me, it's like I have to remember I don't make music so that I can't have made music necessarily. I make music because I'm a musician. I want to be a musician. That's who I am. And what does a musician do? They make music. And so, like, okay, so that's the reason I'm doing it, right? It's not to get the song done. I just need to be a musician, like to be something. That's what I was trying to get across there. It's like, if you're like, here's the thing, right? Is if you're a YouTuber and that you identify as that, and this is your life, and you hate making YouTube videos, like the process, then it's like, your life is spent being something that you hate. You hate your life. You hate yourself.
Punctuated by provisional like outcomes.
Moments of relief.
Hits. Relief.
It's like that can't. That's not. I know that's not I know that's not a life worth living. I know that's not a lived life even. Right. I don't know this.
Well, so exactly that point. If I was having like an identity crisis, because like I don't want to make videos about a Kamala Trump debate. That's not. This is not.
I don't want to be that. Yeah.
What I get when I'm in. The times when I'm in flow state most is like I was doing that archetypal memetics video with the normal distribution and archetypes and all that.
Applied sociology,
archetypal memetics 101, memetic feudalism will be 201. I'm going to eventually break it out as a whole giant lecture series, but
it's so funny because I think since when you started doing that and then you started calling it applied sociology, it's like so funny. It's like I'm doing
I'm hyperstitioning it. Yeah, I'm hyperstitioning it. It's like, well, I'm going to come up with a pseudo academic field. I get emails from people that are like, yo, that was a cool idea. You should consider this.
Yeah.
Like someone added, well, you need to add a dimension of, we talked about this yesterday, of like, there's the meme, but then there's the person receiving the meme and what state they're in when they receive the meme. Like if you're in a theater and you watch a movie, that's going to change how the meme hits you. Versus if you're on a subway watching a movie on your phone, you're going to receive it very differently.
Yeah,
right?
Or much more so. It's like when you, and this is the way that I have it, is like when I'm in a theater, like in a lecture space. Here's a big one. And the Leela thing, when I talk about existential kink, right? I just referenced that book because it's because Leela was the thing I really want to talk about, but I found it through Existential Kink, which has these steps about Jungian shadow work and stuff. So I was like, should I cut all of that? But then eventually I was like, I'm a idea curator. A lot of people find this useful. Like it's not like I want to do my job, and my job is partially here's the ideas. So I decided to include that for people that get something out of that. And then the thing I really cared about is that I, as an all-powerful being, sort of like throw yourself into what you're experiencing as a useful thing to like you can be present, really appreciate it, and sometimes take a moment that you're not enjoying, and when you do that, I, as an all-powerful being, you're like, I'm here for something, and then you can make it better. You're in the optimal space to make it better, actually.
Yeah.
But then the Leela thing is like, like when people go like, oh, so like you're like shadow work, or it's like, oh, so the thing that I think is coming from the world is coming from within me, and I asked for this on some level. Everyone's just like, what about rape victims and the Holocaust? And it's like, okay, so that's outside of the frame that I set, like, and you just took it to a new frame, the absolute extremity. And they say it like I'm like a you could say it
you're
like
an enabler.
Like oh my god, yeah, you're an enabler of Holocaust and rape victim blaming or whatever. And it's like this. And one of the things about it is it's non-human. As in, when I'm at my lectures, if I said the exact same thing, everyone would be quiet and listen, receive it, and they'd be situated to be like, what's the value in this? And then the Q&A, someone would be like, what about this problem? And then I'd be like, well, here's the problem.
Yeah.
And like that's a completely different universe of receptivity. So like theaters receiving something versus a tweet, the internet of your way, you're like, I'm just gonna fucking, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Ooh, I like mathematizing it, like making it seem mathematic, like the whole, like the normal distribution and all that. So it's a coefficient of receptibility or something like that. It's like if it's a high, you're in the ideal state.
It's so funny because it's called applied sociology.
I know.
And meme
it's
smithing.
Applied, yeah.
And you're just you, and it's funny. And that's the most devastating thing is you're kind of cooking, and that's what FD said, I think, on that anarchist podcast.
That's big facts. Yeah. But flow state, my identity crisis. I'm in flow state when I'm doing that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like the archetypal memetics video, most of that time was spent writing the script. And for other videos, it's like, I know the idea I want to get across. It's just me finding the words to connect these two clips or whatever. But this was like, wait, fuck, is it accessibility plus durability? Or is it transmissibility plus durability?
Yeah, you're actually excited.
And I'm like, oh, fuck, okay, wait, how do I think about this? There was a clip I left out about how music is like cross-cultural, like good, like opera music can be received by like people in tribes, like in Sri Lanka or some shit like that.
Right.
And it was like, okay, so that's pure archetypal because it hits on like basic music theory. That's more biological ground and stuff like that. And there's all these different things, and that's when I'm in flow state. And so the whole applied sociology arc is formalizing these terms, because I always have these mental models that are like imagistic, like that normal distribution. And then it's just a matter of, well, how do I concretize these, bring these out, or like the mimetic feudalism idea, right? It's like literal hierarchy. Pragmatism up here is the king or feudal lord or whatever, and then you're one baron, I'm another smaller baron.
Yeah.
And your vassals would surely never ally with my vassals unless us two agreed and we're like, all right, well, pragmatism is the thing here.
Right.
It's not Donald Trump because we diverge on that or whatever.
Yeah.
And so even that's provisional. And so it's all these interlocking different like.
Yeah, I was saying rhizomatic is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, rhizomatic.
There's going to be like a Trump one here, and then let's say there's Jane Gatsby, who we agree on some sort of like aesthetic things, right?
Anarcho-capitalism over here, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what. Like, and then we're completely divergent in these spheres, and then you might kind of converge on Trump. You know what I mean? Like this kind of thing.
Yeah. Rhizomatic structures, yes.
Bonkers. So mimetic feudalism, and then this is something that people are becoming increasingly aware of, is there's the creators that creators listen to, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the tie over, is these are what, lords or something like that.
Well,
right?
that's the thing is, it's
because people can be lords and serfs and things all at the same time.
Right. Yeah, and so there's that. Is like, well,
but you already are like a creator that creators listen to, which is hilarious.
I know,
and you have it across the political divide now,
it.
because if you have FD quoting you and you've like Destiny, and then you talk to conservatives, obviously.
Yeah. Although, really, are there right wingers who? I mean,
well,
my audience
you're
is
centrist and super proudly centrist, so you're not getting like a strict right wing crowd.
Yeah. Allegedly,
you're getting curious.
There definitely are right wing. I know for a fact there are right wing people. Yeah. There's definitely right wing people that watch, but yeah, I mean that's the most. Because I know, like, getting a bunch of views on a YouTube video means nothing to me. I mean, that doesn't mean nothing, but like, it doesn't. I'm not like, my life is, the next day I still wake up in the same bed and I go in the same apartment and I do the same fucking thing, right? So it's like so far the biggest value has been the networking in terms of like, okay, I just flew up to Toronto to go meet all of them. We're talking, and it's just like go back to the relationship thing. It's like, that's the most real. I'm producing stuff not because it's going to get a bunch of views, but because I'm getting my ideas out there, and I trust there will be people. The fact that competent people appreciate what I'm doing is an indication of its utility,
it's a validation.
Or value.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I have the same, like, even for me, like like, because I care about the performer audience divide, what I'm realizing ultimately is like my work is for kind of two different groups of people sometimes, and they obviously will swap the roles in different times, but it's that like there's the audience that I'm making it for, like just people that I want to provide kind of tools that are, I want to just be funny and entertaining and like make beautiful things that they like enjoy, and then I also want to provide potentially like tools that stick, that actually work in their lives and actually do, you know. And then I also make kind of perform for other performers, because I have a whole list of those that find what I'd say extremely useful, like on that, and that's something I'm concerned with, especially in this now, like the age that we're in now, you know, is that like if the world is kind of somewhat orbiting around like nodes of edutainment and people interpreting things and being like curators, then the curators need to speak to each other, which again is like another thing that I'm like no, I don't think my like life is about like trying to, like, it's just another reason that I was like, yeah, I do the Destiny podcast. Like, I think the creators need to speak to each other, even to an uncomfortable degree. It's like, you gotta understand, we're part of a class. We need to discuss our fucking responsibilities, our strategy.
The lords of the land must gather and say, look, we're a coalition here to some degree on some things.
You can't just keep opting out of responsibility. This is what I keep seeing like people do. Is they're like, I'm just here to make money. I'm just here for entertainment. Even like Destiny would say, I'm just doing entertaining content. I'm like, no, you're not. You can't have that anymore. It's more real than that. This is super fucking real. Donald Trump like used attention in social media, is now the president. Now we have that. Now we have meme fucking cabinet members. So it's like, no, it's not about that anymore. It's not just, I'm not just here to get paid and Google will do whatever Google does. It's tech, I have no power. Go fuck yourself.
Let me ask you this. Maybe we can end with this.
Sure.
CJ, I don't know if you know this, but I think the left needs a leftist Joe Rogan. Now, I have a name in mind.